Let's just do a quickie here. This is for the smaller the animal IDs for Living Desert. You're going to have a bigger version coming. It's just stretched out. Have a couple more pieces, but it's going to be basically the same. So if this Mark 1 works for this, then we'll be good to go. So there's going to be 15 of these. If you don't already know, there's going to be 15 of these. Let's get the lay of the land. Here's how the parts are laid out. I've got the skirt pieces. This is going to be the skirt mounting piece. Show you that. This is going to be the basically the face frame system there. This is going to be 1/8 inch backer piece that the post gets welded to. And it's going to be a single triangle 1/4 inch aluminum. These are the Weld Jig pieces. Keep an eye out for those. Same thing here, 1/4 inch. So there you go. So let's just start with the jig. Pretty simple. Just going to rivet all this together. So you have your two pieces here. They're identical. The top, these holes here won't be used for the top. So these go inside here, inside here. You go ahead and just rivet that. You've got this little fin piece. You're just going to rivet that on. And you've got your top, your long piece goes to the back, obviously. And you got your front piece there. So, and then don't forget this little guy in green, this little bar, this little finger guy. So he's just going to rivet to the left-hand side past the Dutchie. So it's just going to go on this side here, rivet it on, good to go. You can see here where that fin goes right there. I'm just going to rivet it on there. Now the fin doesn't do anything but to give you guidance. So this is how this thing works. So you're just going to take that, drop it in. The post is going to sit here and it's going to sit here primarily. These two guys are going to do the work there and there. They're going to do work. This fin really is just for you to get a visual to make sure things are going good. You don't want to see obviously like a big old gap or something, here or here. That means that's just to give you an eyeball. The backer, I'm going to go over that in a sec, but the backer itself has a 32nd of an inch island fill right here, so you can line this up properly to make sure it all just makes sense. So that's kind of how that works. So you're just going to put that in there. So this fin doesn't want to actually dictate what's happening. So if you go to put this in, if you go to put the post in and it bonks against here, and this one is kind of dictating what happens here, then you want to go ahead and like shorten this a little bit, give it a little bit of zing or whatever. And because really all this is just to make sure the angle's proper. And you just want to make sure that like if you see daylight right here, then that's kind of like what you see daylight every time. This doesn't necessarily have to touch. So the idea is that it's set up here properly and it's touching here and it's touching here. And then this is just a reference guide to make sure that, every time whatever amount of daylight you see or whatever, just make sure you see that every single time. And then the finger here is just to make sure that the 1/4 inch bracket plate just kind of sits where it's supposed to be. So when you go to put the backer piece in, you're just going to slide the backer piece in, and then there'll be a groove in the backer plate that the 1/4 inch triangle sits in. And then you're just going to go ahead and just flop this against here, and this triangle is just going to rest up against that finger. And that theoretically, get down on the end here and kind of eyeball it. This should be perfectly, or not, whatever, it should be lined up nice. All of this doesn't have to be within a micrometers, nanometer. It just has to kind of all line up and look good and look symmetrical, but none of this is going to be, it has to be perfect. So when you go to put the 1/4 inch triangle in, you're just going to set it into the groove, and then you're just going to slide it up against, and it's literally going to rest against that groove. That's how you're going to register that. And so once you have that, then you can grab this triangle by hand and just kind of push it up against the post, make sure it's tight, and then you can tack it as needed, tack it here, and then you're going to burn it strategically. Not a lot of heat. Obviously, you don't need to burn the whole thing, but you can give it a good couple welds here, and then just make it look pretty. And then you can just kind of choose like maybe a weld there, and a weld there. I went ahead and went with an 1/8 inch backer plate so you could put a little bit of heat into it. You will have 1/4 inch wall 2x2 posts, so you can put some heat around that, make sure that's burned well. So the combination between this and this should be nice and strong. The backer plate here is out of 1/4 inch. So to get this guy set up, you're just going to take this piece here and you're going to lords it around this edge. Make sure it lines up properly. You got 3/16 big clecos. Make sure this is going to be an outside reference kiss, this red here. So just make sure it lines up nice to the edge there. And then that's going to give you a nice quick, reference, just bonk in the back plate. Make sure it's all lined up nice. And then you're going to clamp it. I put screws all the way around. You're going to wood screw this down to your table all the way around. And that's going to be, how you're going to actually fasten this thing down and make sure it's nice and tight. How this is going to go, you're going to get this built and then you're going to lords this really well to make sure this doesn't go anywhere. This is going to have to survive, 15 runs plus living in our shop, getting thrown around, because they're going to want some more of these. So we want to make sure that this jig is constructed, with strength, and make sure it's square. When you go to put this on, make sure left to right, front and center, it's all kind of square. You might want to consider lordsing this really well, and then while the lords is still wet, have the welder ready and maybe throw a couple tacks here, just kind of around. Don't put too much heat into it. We want to keep it flat, but maybe throw some nice security tacks while the lords is wet. Then it can cure all as one, and it'll be on there nice and strong. So maybe give that a thought. If not, just make sure this is well, lords up really well. But maybe put this up on some blocks, put your clecos through so it'll sit, and then maybe throw some tacks. And then when it comes time to actually, putting this thing down, we have these around the shop. They should be long enough if you can find these. I think they might be on the shelf on the side, or if they're on the clamp cart. But I think we have enough of these. These are cam lock high production run clamps that you can put on your table. So you'll have your 4 screw holes here, and you would just maybe mount this like right here on your table, and then have the arms stick out onto it if you haven't used these before. And then you just pull real hard and it cams. You kind of set this, you set the length here to set up how much cam you get. And so you could set one here, set 3 along the edge, you can set one there, and you can sort of just cam lock this thing down. And that'll be for high production runs. That way you can just, pop it open, slide in another one, slam, 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 and then you slide in your bar. Obviously you clamp and clamp, make sure everything's lined up, toss a little 1/4 inch triangle on there, and then tack, 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 off you go. So I think that should be pretty speedy. If we don't have these, then get the one that works best for the hair, and then order these up at McMaster, get yourself some. But I think we have those floating around. For the face, we've got basically, it's going to be like a blade sign, as you know from the other video. Keeping out, so I didn't want to do a bunch of reference kisses for this, so because of the time, because there'd be so many pieces. So I went ahead and just did little notches. So match the type of notch spacing that you see to the jig. So you got like 2 here, you got 1 here, and then none here for this one, and you've got 3 kind of stretched out ones. So that way you can tell that this is that one, and this is this one with the 2, and that's this one with the 1. And then for the verticals, I went ahead and made these, this will be rounded, but you can tell that these are square chopped out. So I've got 2 over here, and I got 1 on this side. That doesn't match any jig, but that just kind of lets you know. All of these notches are going to go to the back side, and that's the side that the jig goes on. There is only going to be 2 jigs. Again, I didn't want to waste a lot of material, didn't need it. So this will go on the inside, but it'll be to the back side. And what you're going to do is cleco it all together, and then burn this, and bring it all together. Then what you're going to do is, while you still have access, go ahead and weld the seams, put a tack on the inside of the seams to hold this thing together, because there won't be a jig on the front. That way it'll be held together nice and square and ready for the face. Then the face comes on, you're just going to go ahead and take that and lords the O&I face to the front, and then you're done. So you'll have a jig system in the back that'll hold this together as one unit. Then once these are lords on, you can go ahead and insert your 1/4 to 20 riv nuts, and you're good to go. then that system is done. So when you're doing these for full production, once you get to that point, you can set these aside, make sure they're all cleaned up and ready to go, because eventually the next step, the final step, the last thing you'll do is you will lords this to the actual face once these are all welded up. So you weld stick and then you'll put the faces on. And then once the quarter 20s are in there, you'll have the one removable face. It has the rounded edges here for safety, but these are removable panels, removable by Living Desert, and you can tell that these have the reference kissed arrow on the back side. So these basically, when we have 60 or however many of these will go directly to the vinyl shop once they get painted. So those aren't really for you. And then be on the lookout for the order. I did order 2 of these up. Sorry guys, these are not for you. You can order some if you want though. But make sure these 2 get to Johnny. Johnny will get these to the people who we're delivering these signs to. That's part of their system. They're going to be changing these faces out. So keep an eye out for this also in the order. We will have these Allen head screws that'll look nice and pretty. But again, these are kind of user changeable, so that's for them. So that takes care of the face part. You've got the jig all ready to go, so you can weld those. And let's get to the skirt. So the skirt's just 2 pieces like you saw. You have an inside piece and an outside piece, and then that's going to get held on by this little unit, this kind of jiggy bracket system that's going to actually have the riv nuts in it, and that's kind of how it's going to be held together. So before you lords the face on, once you get this bracket welded on, or the post, to the backer there, the next system will be these guys. So just bend, 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 good to go. The longer side will be the front side. You see that there, and the back side will be the shorter side. You're going to go ahead and take these guys here, and you're going to rivet those to the outside of they don't go to the inside, they go to the outside, like that and like that. You're going to rivet them up. And then this unit, as you can see here, the purple and the magenta fits. I got a little bit of clearance. You should be able to then slide this bracket all the way up until bonk. So this is meant to bonk, and that's how you know where it sits. And I know that this might be oil canned a little bit, so you might have to just make sure it's pushed, because it'll be welded here, so it might be kind of bent. So just make sure it's not hitting any like turkey goobers or anything right there. Make sure you've got a nice bonk. Then once that's in place, it's as simple as run a bead here, run a bead here. Make sure that's nice because that's going to hold the skirt on. And then if you see fit, go ahead and do some plug welds if necessary right in there, or maybe just the center one, whatever. It won't hurt my feelings as long as you know it's on there nice. And then that's good to go. So, you might want to put the 5/16 riv nuts in before you weld on to be easier. So maybe rivet and then go ahead and do your riv nuts, and then get these all ready to go. Again, you're only doing 1 right now, but when you go to do 30 of these or whatever, you can just get them all set. And then you'll slide it on, bonk, tack, tack, weld, 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 good to go. So once that's done, there's really nothing for the skirt other than to bend it up. And then once that's bent up, it shoe boxes into itself, and you will do the 5/16 bolts that we use for Living Desert, and they'll go right into where the riv nuts are. So that's these guys here. Again, that's in that order with the other screws and the T-bar handle. There's those 3 things. Keep an eye out. We already have these for the other signs we do for Living Desert, but since we're going to need about 120 more, I brought in some. So keep an eye out for those. Those get painted black. For these guys, again, they're really simple. You just keep an eye out for this one. This is the outer side one. This one slides out from the left if you're looking at it. And then the other guy slides in from the front, from the right, and he has the notch for the triangle plate. So it's pretty obvious how they go together. But this is the one you actually see. There was no way to really avoid it, but I know when we do C channels in the brake, we try to make the longer ears, we try to make these shorter than this part is here, the middle part. But you can see where it's just slightly bigger. There was no way to get around that. Just for this top part. The bottom part this is wider than that, so that's okay. So you might have a bonk issue, but the new brake has a slightly offset jaw. So I think it might just miss, but if it doesn't, just be aware you might have some bonk issues just right here. But so go ahead and power through that, and then maybe you have to correct it. But I think it'd be best for this outer one here to be slightly overcooked, because that's going to be, you know, you want it to be nice and tight. You don't want it to be kind of sticking out on both ends, and you want to have this seam nice. Same thing for this guy. The bottom is definitely wider here. The ears, you know, you can see that's 0.5. So you won't have a problem there, but you definitely would have had a problem here. So hence the funkiness. I went ahead and clearanced it so it shouldn't bonk as much. It maybe will bonk in here, but I didn't want to do any more here because this edge here tucks in nice and gives us a nice reference bottoming out section there. So when you slide this one inside the other one, it should be good. Now, none of these technically have to be perfect. On the Mark 1, use your kind of eyeball. I mean, if it's slightly out, because there's a lot of geometry, it's a lot of weirdness. I did the best I could, but when you're dealing with compound angles here to here to here that are different on both ends, it's very tough to lay out. So I think I have it figured out. If there's any, you know, if these holes aren't within just a billionth of an inch of each other, but as long as you can get the screws through and it kind of goes together and it sort of looks like it's supposed to, and this angle here kind of tucks up nice to here as best as possible, that's kind of what I'm looking for, even if there's just a tiny bit of daylight. But as long as it looks like it's supposed to look ish, then that's kind of what we're looking for. These might not be perfectly aligned to each other from this one to this one, and then, you know, to this guy here, to this riv nut. But as long as it's all within, you know, a 64th or something, or if it's really bad, this is why we're going to do 1. I can adjust it a little bit and try to see if we can make it work. But otherwise, that's kind of what we're looking for on that as far as a Mark 1. So, but I think that's it. We got this guy here. I think you got that figured out. You got the skirt. Let's see, the panel, the face, how this goes together. Oh, okay, yeah. So again, you're gonna want to bring in 2x2 by quarter square tube. You've got, this is 30-degree cut. Don't go on autopilot and cut a 45. You're gonna want to do a 30-degree cut there. Order up 10 sticks, that'll be for the whole job. But we're going to be doing, some of these are going to be cut almost in half for a plate mount for concrete. So it's not going to be all 64s. So that's why I'm telling you hold off, but just go ahead and cut 1. We might even have a stick of 1/4 inch in stock just to get the ball rolling. But if not, let's get this ordered up. And so you guys can get going at least one of them. So anyway, hit me up with any questions as usual.